Yo, what's going on, everybody? Hopefully y'all doing well. We'll be getting officially started here momentarily. If you can, please share the link, as I am now. Once again, hope everybody's day is going well. Getting started here momentarily. If you can, please share the link and groove a little bit. All right, got the link shared out there, so we're good to go. I'm gonna let this song finish up a little bit here, then we'll get it officially started here. Sister Felita, what's going on? Good afternoon. Ty Fox, it seemed like a new name now. I don't remember seeing that name before. Welcome. Y'all can, please share the link. Gonna go ahead and get the main class started now. Song about to end in 10 seconds. All right. Let's go ahead and move that out the way. Go ahead and hit that button so we don't got an echo for the rest of this thing. And let's go ahead and hit that intro music and get tonight started. Here we go, guys. Check 1 2 1 2. Let's make sure this is working for y'all. Yo, what's going on? It's Brotha J podcast.
Brotha J podcast.
Brotha J apologetics. Let's go. Brotha J apologetics. Let's go. Brotha J apologetics. Let's go. Brotha J apologetics, 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 let's go.
Brotha J podcast.
Yo, brothers and sisters, what's going on? It's your Brotha J. The Lord has allowed us to reconvene here another night, Friday, February 26, 2021, here on the Brotha J podcast. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Joseph and walking by faith. There was some more stuff I want to put in there, but that title would have been way too long. But we're going to talk about a couple of things, though. But the foundation of what we're going to be going through is Joseph. We're going to read through his life, what happened. Many of us know the story or the overarching theme of the story, but we're going to pay attention to the elements that most people really don't focus on in the story, because that's just as much as important, and it will help you in terms of how you live your life and walking by faith, as the scripture said, not by sight. Um, I had something else that I was going to say, but my mind went blank just now. But in the meantime, while it's coming back, let me introduce my brother from another mother, same father, and Deacon Lucito. What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, fam? What's going on, Brother J? Yeah, man, I'm excited about Joseph, man. Everybody knows the story about Joseph, but man, there's a lot we can learn from his situation, especially in today's world, man. So, peace and blessings to everybody listening in. Thank you, thank the Lord for allowing y'all to listen in. So, yeah,
Most definitely. And just like Deacon just said, you know, there's a lot that we can learn from Joseph's life. Obviously, we know the scripture tells us to walk by faith, not by sight. And this is a classic example of being able to do that. And it left my mind again. But maybe it ain't time for me to say it. All right, so we go just go ahead. We go just go ahead then. every time I get to that little faith, walk by faith, not by sight part, that thing is in my head. I'm like, I'm about to say that next, and then. Well, anyway, it'll come up at some point at the right time. All right, so Genesis 37 is where we will begin at with Joseph's life. And like we said, we're going to pay attention to we're going to read everything, but the elements of the event and the story that a lot of people may read but kind of just read over because you're kind of focused on the big thing. It's very important to pay attention to those smaller details because that's where the battle really, or the testing of faith is really at. Not in the big things or not in the end result, but all the little events and things that takes place that leads up to it. That's how all our lives are, no matter how little you think it may be. But God is so detailed that every little detail of your life adds up to the big shebang at the end, which is called your life and whatever your destiny is. So a wreck you might have been in when you was younger. You stubbed your toe on one certain day and it kept you from this certain event. Your car broke down, tire blew out, and it delayed you to where you had to turn around, go back home. You couldn't go where you wanted to go. All these little things that a lot of times people, chalk up to chance and things like that. You guys got to understand that, as the scripture said, God is concerned with every detail of your life. Every last one of these events, from the time that you got sick, to the time that you needed to go to the dentist, to the time you had a certain surgery, to the time that, or maybe got thrown in jail, hopefully unjustly. And I say hopefully because you would have not been suffering as a criminal. But either way, every event that's taking place, good or bad, your fault, not your fault. All those things play into the end result, which is your destiny, right? Which is your fate, meaning that end result of your life that would then make the case as to where your eternal estate will be. Whether you walked uprightly, feared God, or you walked the evil path. So, and then eternally be destroyed. Obviously, not walking by faith. So we're going to look at that. Genesis 37. Let me flick my screen here so you guys can see. All right. So we're going to be reading NASB translation as we go through Joseph's life. But y'all pay attention and please be, what's the word I'm looking for? Patient. Because there's a lot to draw out from these events. And this is probably going to have to be a two-part. Matter of fact, actually, I know it's most likely going to be a two-part because of the things we want to draw focus on and time. So, but let's go ahead and start tonight regarding Joseph, walking by faith, not by sight. And I know what came to mind that kept leaving. So let me say it before it goes away. Is the last live stream, guys, we was talking about how the way you live your life should not be dictated on the hills and valleys of life or the lot that you live in, whether you be poor, whether you be rich, and we talked about it a little bit last live stream about, let's talk about that a little bit because this is important before we start Joseph. And we talked about it where God's standard is the same, whether you are poor and have nothing or you rich and got everything. He expects you not to be greedy over there. That causes you to be stingy and not giving of your resources that he blessed you with. And he also don't want you to be greedy when you have nothing. Somebody may say, well, how are you greedy when you have nothing? Worshiping the things of this world and therefore going to steal or rob. All right. Greed, the sin of greed is committed in that. It's not yours, but you want it. So there's envy, there's jealousy, there's whatever other work of the flesh that's involved with it. Then leads you to go and take something that's not yours into your possession. And then you don't want to give it back. That's why you stole it. So we talk about greed, and we know that greed amounts to idolatry, worshiping the material things of this world. So the Lord don't want you to be greedy whether you got nothing. He don't want you to be greedy whether you got everything. He don't want you to steal to survive if you poor. He don't want you to steal from people if you rich. All right. He don't want you to pervert justice on behalf of the rich or on behalf of the poor. The poor did wrong and they got nothing, but they were doing evil. They suffer. All right. They suffer for it the same as the rich. You don't take bribes and under table payments and pervert justice. Right. You're not to condemn the innocent and you're not to let the guilty go free. Right. When you're talking about justice, law wise. And so the Lord's standard is the same. He expects you to be holy and perfect no matter what lot in life you're in. All right. And so this is very important because this has to do with your integrity. If we talked about that at last live stream, if it's easy for you to serve the Lord and be, walking by faith quotation mark when everything's good, but as soon as things hit the fan and you start getting some enemies and people start slandering and insulting you and things like that, all of a sudden you lose your integrity and you start to respond back and deal with them, returning evil for evil, threatening back, insulting back, etc. What it does is reveal your heart and that you didn't truly have the faith you thought you had, because as soon as calamity or evil came from God, meaning adversity, you lost your integrity. You set it aside and started to behave like those in darkness. It's easy to love people who love you back, who get you gifts, who always say nice things. It's way harder to love people who hate you, but yet that's the truest form of love because that's what God did. And so it's important to remember those things, especially as we move through the story of Joseph. So now let's go ahead and jump in there. Unless you have something to add right quick, Deke.
No, that was a good preface for this this text right here. There's a lot we're going to take away, but that really sets the stage on how we need to examine ourselves. God, says to examine yourself. When we look at Joseph, and if his life and his testimony, him going through suffering doesn't bring about encouragement, it should also bring about conviction. If you're not, if you don't have those same characteristics as Joseph did,
Right.
But it's important that we grow in this likeness, and so we have these examples. We thank the Lord for keeping these stories for us to learn and how to grow in righteousness. Because as you say all the time, man, it's the duty of man, is to fear the Lord and to hate all evil, man. And part of that is walking upright and suffering righteously when you're going through trials. So
Absolutely.
So this is going to be a great example for the body, Lord will.
Right. So let's go ahead and jump into it then. Genesis 37. Once again, we read the NASB, and let's go ahead, bro.
All right, now Jacob lived in the land where his father had lived as a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when he was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zipporah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a multicolored tunic.
So far we see a little bit into Joseph's character as a youth, and we'll see in more detail as we read down why is it that he brought back a report to his father regarding his brothers. And we'll see this was something that was common that he normally did with his father, while him and his brothers out there watching the flock. And he'll come back and let his father know, the state of the flock and his brothers, how they're treating the animals and things like that. And so, and as it said here, it said that that Israel or Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons because he was the son of his old age. So we know he was a special child to his father, because normally when you hit old age, you're past the time of having kids. All right. And so yet he has this son, Joseph, in his old age, and his love for him, though he loved his other sons, but he had a special bond with Joseph. So I said, made him a multicolored tunic. Go ahead.
And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers. And so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms.
So it was because the love of the father towards the son that caused the other brothers to become jealous and then hate the brother who did no evil to him. He didn't do any evil to him. There was nothing that Joseph did to become more special. He just was special in the eyes of his father, above his brothers, because he was the child of old age. That's it. So their hatred for their brother wasn't because of anything Joseph did. It was because of who he was in their eyesight and how special he was in their father's sight. So now we see this envy and this bitterness starting up in the hearts of his brothers. And they couldn't even deal with their brother who never did evil to them in friendly terms. All right, so it was always insults or plotting some evil against them now from this point on. So we see this already building up. Joseph hasn't done anything to his brothers that was wrong that warranted them hating him. All right, so far we see his unjust hatred for their brother. All right, go ahead.
Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brother said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words.
This is very important because this dream was not from Joseph. This dream was from God. And the interpretation of the dream was not from Joseph, but from God. God gave the dream, God gave the interpretation. Joseph had the dream. Joseph then told his brothers what it, or told them the elements of the dream or what the dream was. His brothers understood what those things in the dream meant. And so they scoffed and mocked him over the dream, and they hated him more because of what the dream was. So this dream that came from God and the interpretation that came from God caused them to hate Joseph, in which these things don't even originate. Their hatred was towards their brother. So not only did they hate him or start to hate him because of the favor that he had in his father's sight over them, but now here's the Heavenly Father giving him a dream and interpretation that he's going to rule over his brothers, which to them was a laughing matter because Joseph wasn't the firstborn. And during this time, they had the firstborn rights or the birthrights that normally went to the oldest brother. All right. So for a younger brother down the line to rule over his brothers, this would have to go against what is natural when we talk about birthrights and things like that. So he got this dream saying he's going to be a ruler. And he's going to rule over them. All right. And they're scoffing and mocking him at this. Look at this dream because it's very important. And what the dream was and what God showed him. All God showed him, and I'm going to just put this in your mind now. So as we read the story, God showed him the destiny part, the end. You're going to be a ruler and rule over your brethren. That's all it showed. That's all the dream was. All right. Showed them the end or the destiny. Nothing in the dream was how you going to get there, how long it's going to take to get there. None of that. None of the fine details that's all going to add up to the big shebang at the end. All he showed them was the big shebang. The end. The promise. All right. Go ahead.
Then he had yet another dream, and informed his brothers of it, and said, Behold, I have had yet another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. He also told it to his father, as well as to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have had? Am I and your mother and your brothers actually going to come to bow down to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind.
So Jacob keeps it in his mind what this dream was. He's pondering on it. His brothers, every time they hear a new dream or a new message or how their brother, who they already don't like, is going to rise into this great power over them, it moves them in their hearts to hate him even more. Now, the Lord is the one giving these dreams. And the Lord got to know, since he knows everything, that when he gives these dreams and interpretation, that it's only going to stir in the hearts of his brothers more hatred. Yet the Lord sends it anyway. Why is this? Because the Lord's stirring their hearts so that what he said can happen. Just as the scripture said, the hearts of the kings, the hearts of mankind is in the hands of God. He turns them whichever way he wants. By nature, men hate God. When God said don't do something, men by nature want to do it. What God said don't do. So when he sends a dream and he's sending this message Joseph's gonna rule over his brothers, and his brothers hear it, by nature they're gonna get upset about this. And the Lord stirring up their hearts by way of the dreams that he sent, so that they can then be moved to what they think is to wreck it, but they're only going to fulfill it.
Man.
This is that sovereignty of God that we talk about all the time. And this is what you see in the book of Acts. Now, I'll reference that quickly when the Apostle Peter was on, or was it Paul? When Paul was on the ship, and the Lord had told him it was going to shipwreck, but not one soul was going to be lost. He told it to the sailors when the storm got up. He said, my God has told me this, we're going to shipwreck, but not one soul is going to be lost. The people panicked. It was like, no. When the wind started beating on the boat, they was like, oh, let's throw all the stuff off. So they threw the stuff off to lighten up the boat, thinking they're going to save it. Then they looked afar off and saw land. And they was like, let's turn the ship this way. They're running into land so we can preserve the boat. So they turn it, go toward land, and what happens? Some rocks was in there, and that's what actually caused the shipwreck. So their plan, man's plan, to divert certain actions or certain outcomes, they're in their brain, what they're doing to divert something, what they think will divert it, only brings the thing about. It's like a matrix. You can't escape it. You can't escape it. Fear drove them to make the decisions that they made to then fulfill the plan of God. You can't thwart God's will. When you say something's going to be done, you can think you're stopping it, but you're only going to fulfill it. Same thing with Esau. Same thing with the people who said, crucify him to Christ. Every person that thought they were diverting something to keep something that they didn't want to happen from happening, it only brought about the thing they didn't want. So here, the Lord sends these dreams, knowing it's going to move his brothers to envy and jealousy in their hearts. And so he gives it anyway. And we see they get more angry with their brother. Let's watch it all unfold. So he sends him 2 dreams telling him he's going to be a ruler. That's it. He's going to rule over his brother. That's it. That's all God told him in the dreams. Go ahead. Now, most people, when they get some dream like this, they be like, Oh yeah, they get all big headed. I'm gonna be a king, and all that kind of stuff, man. But the Lord didn't tell him how he was gonna get to that position. Now we're gonna see how he's gonna get to that position, and it's gonna be a long situation. All right, go ahead, bro.
Long road. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are your brothers not pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." Then he said to him, "Go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me."
And that's what Joseph had done previously when they were in the other pasture with the thing. So we see that was something that his father would have him do. Go ahead.
So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." Then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan.
This is very important, guys. And I know if you haven't read it all the way, some of the stuff I'm saying, you'll be like, huh? But once you done stuck around, we read through this then, and you kind of come back and maybe listen to the video, do you understand? Because some of the stuff's come in my head because we've read this. But look at what's happening. All the events that happen under the sun, like Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 3, everything that happens under the sun happens at the time God appoints it. There's nothing that happens under the sun that was not appointed by God, whether it be good, whether it be evil. Whatever takes place happens at the time God appoints it. I mean, everything is calculated plan of God. That's what that means. So his brothers that were normally in one place moved the pasture or moved the flock to another pasture so they can eat. Meaning the place they were at, the flock done ate up enough over there that now it's time to move so they can find new grazing ground. And who sets up the grazing grounds, by the way? I wonder. God does, because he sends the rain that causes the ground to flourish so that the animals can graze. All right. So the Lord sets up this place in Dothan that they then went to. Just so happens, nothing called chance in God's sight. This area where they're feeding at is going to also be the place where, it's just some random Ishmaelites is going to be traveling through there in a little while, to take Joseph. All right. But anyway, so they go to Dothan. He goes to Dothan to look for his brothers who had went there. Go ahead.
When they saw him from a far distance, and before he came closer to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Now then, come, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we will say, a vicious animal devoured him. Then we will see what will become of his dreams."
So in their heart, we're going to stop it. We're going to kill him. We're going to throw him in this hole. We're going to say a vicious animal ate him. And we're going to see where his little dream of being a ruler over us going to come about. It ain't going to come about. We're going to kill him. So they got this whole plan in their heart. But the plan that's stirring up in their heart, it's only because God moved them that way. So that what's about to happen right now can actually just fulfill what God wanted. Just as Job said, he said, "Our God dwells in heaven. He does as he pleases on heaven and on earth, and no one can thwart his will." This is why the law and the prophet said, "Men devise plans, but it's the counsel of the Lord that will stand." All right. So what men think they're doing to divert the plan of God, they're only fulfilling what God's plan was. And then they'll be destroyed for wanting to divert the plan of God. All right. But nevertheless, his brothers say, let's kill him, throw him into one of these pits here, and we'll say a vicious animal devoured him to our parents and everything, and we'll see what become of his dreams. All right, go ahead.
But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands by saying, "Let's not take his life." Then Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, so that later he might rescue him out of their hands to return him to his father."
So here's Reuben's heart moves compassion for his brother Joseph, and he tells his brother, "Yo, don't kill him. Let's just put him in this hole, wherever the case is, and just kind of leave him there." Because Reuben was planning on sneaking back and get his brother out of the hole and then bring him back to his father's house. All right. All of this is calculated by the plan of God as he moves the hearts of men to bring about his plan. So his brothers want to kill him. Reuben say, "Yo, let's just put him in the hole." But we about to see both of these plans merge together so that God's plan could be the one that stands. So then Reuben said to him, "Shed no blood, throw him in this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hand on him." All right. Talking about the wilderness near Dothan. So that later he might rescue him out of his hands and return him back to his father. Go ahead.
So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the multicolored tunic that was on him. And they took him and threw him into the pit. So the pit was empty. Now the pit was empty without any water in it.
Meaning a well. Go ahead.
Then they sat down to eat a meal. But as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead.
No, they just happened.
Gilead.
They just happened to be passing through that day. Go ahead. Man, sometimes I laugh at the sovereignty, not laugh in a mock way, but I laugh in amazement at the sovereignty of God and how he sets things up. Go ahead.
Bro, it is beyond humans.
Yeah, bro.
Beyond mortals, man. With their camels carrying labdanum resin and balsam and myrrh, and on their way to bring them down to Egypt.
No, they just happened to go to Egypt, the greatest kingdom of the time. They was just happened just traveling down there, Go ahead. This is amazing, man.
And Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by. So they pulled him out and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. So they brought Joseph to Egypt.
Now, this is a reaccounting of the story after the fact. We're not reading the real-time version of the story. A lot happened in between these sentences, between them roughhousing their brother, get his coat off, throw him in the hole. I can imagine Joseph, he wasn't mute. He had a mouth. I'm pretty sure he's like, "Why are you doing this to me? Stop, guys. What's going on?" Then he's down in the pit, can't get out. His brothers finally pull him out. Maybe there was a brief period of time in his brain he thought, "Oh, man, they're pulling me out, man. They're going to save me or whatever." And then when he gets out of there, now they hand him off, making a deal with the Midianites to sell him off into slavery. I can imagine Joseph's crying. I can imagine Joseph's, "Why y'all doing this?" and feeling betrayed and all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything to his brothers, yet he's sold as a slave to these traders that passing by, just so happening going to Egypt. So there's a lot that's going on, guys. Joseph, as a young man, was a man of integrity who obeyed his father and took care of flock, which took discipline to watch over these animals. And then he gets these two dreams from God. He's going to be a king, he's going to be a ruler. He's going to be a king, he'll be a ruler. And he's going to rule over his family. And you see these dreams, have these dreams, tell it to his family. They mock him and everything, but the Lord sent him another dream. But next thing you know, he's in a hole, and his brothers ripped his coat off, and now he's being sold as a slave. So I can imagine in real time, you probably forgetting about this whole king ruler dreams you had, because now you're dealing with the real-time experience of being jacked up by your brothers, thrown in a hole, and sold as a slave. You got to deal with the present traumas of the actual present situation going on. All right? So God shows you the end result, doesn't tell you all the things that's going to happen in the midst of it to get you there. And now you're dealing with this real-time experience of trauma. All right. And so the hatred of your family and all this stuff and being sold as a slave. All right. Here's these little details. Somebody might be like, well, that's going off of the trail of the dream. No, absolutely not. So I'm stopping periodically to kind of throw y'all brains in the midst of what's going on that you're reading, and to understand the trauma that he's going through right now. After having two of these kind of dreams from God, you're gonna be a king and blah blah blah. Joseph was being a king and ruling over his family. Yours, though not a dream, yet a promise, just as Joseph's dream was, a promise of eternal life in Christ, inheriting the promised land, the eternal kingdom of God. God says all those that call upon him will not be ashamed. They will be saved. He tells you, end result, boom. He don't tell you all the details of your life. He don't tell you when you're going to be sick, if you're going to lose a limb at some point, whether you're going to have some major stroke at some point, how long you're going to live, how you will die. He don't tell you none of that unless he reveal it like he did to Peter when he told him about his death. But other than that, those things are reserved for God, and he don't reveal that to mankind. But he does tell you the end result. So do you believe that? Do you believe his promise? Because if you believe the promise or the end result, that faith in what God promised that your end will be will help carry you through the intermediate present things that you go through.
Boom, man.
That's why you have to look at Christ, who's the author and the finisher of your faith, if you're going to endure. You can't focus upon the present evil being done to you. Though you're experiencing it, you can't be focused upon it because human strength can't bear that. Somebody insults you long enough, if you keep focusing on the fact they're insulting you and who it is that's insulting you and how bad, it makes you feel because of this certain person that's doing it, depending on how close or distant they are from you, eventually your human strength going to run out, and then you're going to do what Christ said don't do. And if you don't get a grip of that, you're going to continue to live according to the flesh and respond to insult for insult, railing for railing, returning evil for evil, because your human strength can only take but so much before your pride or self-pride kick in or ego kick in, where you want to defend yourself in some evil way, which you would justify to yourself as good because somebody was doing evil to you. All right? But if you focus on the promise, like Christ focused on the promise of his father, or Joseph, or Abraham, where his intermediate situation was he was old, his wife was barren, there's no way they're having a baby. Literally no way they're having a baby. Yet, by faith, remembering the promise God made, this time next year you'll have a son. That's what took him through the trials that he dealt with in the present, that then, in the end, the promise came about. All right? So, remember that. Let me bring this back up. All right. So remember that. So the Lord gave him the end result. You're going to be a king and rule over your brothers. Now he's going through all these things God didn't reveal to him. And we're going to see his integrity and faith and how he acted. All right. And that's the most important thing. You got the promise. But when you start to go through the little things in life, these little events in life, hills and valleys, like we like to call them, good and bad, it's important that you live a certain way through all those things. All right. You can't go up and down like this. When things are good, you're great and you're the best believer ever. When things are bad, you just might as well worship the devil because you just treating everybody bad, and you hate everybody. You can't love, you can't speak to them, and all this kind of stuff. You can't love your enemy and all of that. The commandment of God is opposed to what you are by nature, by carnal nature. It's impossible for humans to love people that hate them. You need the Spirit of God, and you must walk according to the Spirit. So, go ahead, bro. So we see him starting to go through this stuff now, these trials.
Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his garments. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the multicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not." Then he examined it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So Jacob tore his clothes and put on a sackcloth undergarment over his waist and mourned his son many days.
So remember when Joseph had that second dream and told it to his brothers and father, it said his father kept it in mind. He kept it in mind, what the dream was. Though he kept it in mind, dealing with the present thing that's going on before him now, where all the signs seemingly it convinced him to believe his son was dead. So he had to periodically or temporarily forget what that dream was. Had he remembered that, and let's say that stayed at the forefront of his mind, when his son brought him that coat, even though they said, "Hey, this is your son's coat," he'd be like, "Oh, he had to lose it. There's no way he's dead because of this dream God gave. He can't be a ruler if he's dead. He can't be a ruler over us if he's dead. He's got to be alive. My boy's alive." But Jacob had to temporarily forget that dream that his brother said, that his son said, in order for his other sons to have convinced him that Joseph got killed. All right. And for him to mourn, truly mourn, as if his son was really dead. So they deceived their father. And because Jacob was deceived by his sons, he actually believed in an illusion, which was not reality, which was that his son was dead when he was really not. All right. So he had a real human reaction to falsehood. It was a lie, but he believed it in the moment. All right. He was deceived by his sons. So he's mourning over Joseph. Go ahead.
Then all his sons and all his daughters got up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted.
How evil is that? They knowingly lied to their father, and while he's groaning and moaning over his son that he thinks is dead, his sons who know he ain't dead, that they sold him, are up there trying to, "It'll be all right, Dad. He was a good son, wasn't he? He's in a better place." And y'all know he's alive. How evil is that? Not only did they hate Joseph, they hate their father and their sisters, who they also deceive. Everybody that ain't the brothers that sold him think Joseph dead. All right, but go ahead, bro.
And he said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt.
He's had a siren going, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
To Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard.
Oh, just so happened. The one that was going to buy Joseph, was the bodyguard of the Pharaoh. Nobody big, just the captain of the bodyguard. So we see something in God's plan unfolding right now. Is the Lord sent these dreams, stir the hearts of his brothers to hate Joseph, to then sell him to have him sold to into Egypt. Then they come back and they lie to their father, all right, and say that he died. And his father believed it temporarily. The Lord appointed that his father would believe it temporarily. Because by his father believing that temporarily, it would keep them there in that land and not going looking for Joseph. They would stay where they're at. This is very important because of what God's going to do a couple of years later on. All right. So we see the Lord has them through the evil of Jacob's sons, through the evil of Jacob's sons, have them stay put. Boom. Nobody's going to look for Joseph. While the Lord does what he does with Joseph over here in Egypt to bring about the dream he gave so that he would then merge them back when it's time to fulfill it. This is what we see so far. He shuts them off. Boom, nobody's looking for Joseph. They believe he's dead. The father believes he's dead. The brothers know he's alive. But through their sin, he holds them still. Boom. But over here, Joseph, who's innocent, now we see what's about to happen with Joseph. Remember, Joseph had the dreams, yet he's going through these trials. It looked like with his eyes, how in the world I'm going to become a king? I'm a slave. But we're going to see. Go ahead. Oh, actually, let's because it's still, yeah, go to 39, Genesis 39 when it goes back to Joseph situation. Go ahead.
All right, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian.
It's very important because we're about to see the integrity and the character of Joseph. There was a more modern man that a lot of people laugh at, and he's the butt of his name is the butt of jokes. All right, but his name was Uncle Tom. Now, when you hear people refer to other black people as Uncle Toms, it's they are super obedient to the white people and all this dumb stuff. All right, they do everything their master says, right? Because the white man's supposed to be the oppressor and everything in the eyes of a lot of these people. But Uncle Tom, for those who actually, read about Uncle Tom, this is a man that was of integrity, and he was so trustworthy for his masters. One, his master hated that he would have to sell him. But while talking about Uncle Tom, he talked about his character, how he found religion, and how he was so trustworthy. The master would give Uncle Tom money, and they would allow him to leave the plantation by himself with no chaperones, not in chains or anything. They would let him leave the plantation, travel to do his master's business, because he was such a man of integrity. They knew he would come back and not steal their money or run away or anything like that. He would come back. He was an honest man. All right. And so, but a lot of people, people with rebel minds make Uncle Tom the butt of jokes. But that was the character of Uncle Tom in the Uncle Tom story. Here's Joseph, sold as a slave to the captain of the bodyguard. And while a slave, the Lord being with him, meaning he was upright character, he was trustworthy. And because he worked hard with his hands, being obedient slave to his master or oppressor, meaning doing what they said, the Lord turned their hearts towards him, and he found favor in their sight. All right. When a man's ways please the Lord, he will cause even his enemies to be at peace with him, just as written. All right. So he got favor in the sight of the captain of the bodyguard, his master who bought him, and he brings him into the house. He becomes what people call a house Negro. All right. He becomes a house Negro. All right. So now he's in the house. While he's in the house, look at his integrity. Go ahead, because this is important. Go ahead.
Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant. And he made him overseer over his house and put him in charge of all he owned.
As wicked as the movie was, I saw it. Y'all probably saw it. I saw it when I was in blindness. All right. And that was that movie with Jamie Foxx in it when he was a slave. What the name of that movie was? Django. Remember the butler man that Samuel L. Jackson played? That was the personal servant guy of the white master. All right. This is Joseph. The one that obeys his master, do everything his master said, gives the report if anybody's acting up. He's that guy. All right. The guy that everybody laughed about and didn't like in the movie. because you wanted the Django to come in and ruin stuff and make a bunch of people rebellious and revolt. You wanted that part of you wanted to be like that. All right. And here's this Uncle Thomas dude that's always telling his master, hey, they starting up a revolt out there, master, and stuff like that, and get everybody in trouble. So y'all ain't like him. But that's Joseph. That's Joseph, man. A person of integrity that obeys and is being an honest worker and servant to his master. All right. So Joseph found favor in his sight, it says, and became his personal servant to his master. All right. Which is a very high position, higher than all the other slaves. Go ahead.
It came about that from the time he made him overseer in his house and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. So the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field.
So the crops, the possessions within the house, any goods of the master, the house, meaning the family of the master, whatever was of the master's, whether inside the house or in the field, when you're talking about crops and grapes and anything else they had them out there doing, it was all blessed by God himself on the account of Joseph that was being obedient and a man of integrity, walking upright before the Lord. So not only was Joseph blessed, but his master was blessed as well. And we know that his master was a good one that didn't abuse Joseph, because he trusted Joseph so much he made him oversee over everything he owned. Everything he owned. You put a slave in charge of your inheritance and your possessions, you really trust that man. All right? Especially when he's not of your people. So we see the favor that he got in the sight of his master, and God blessed not only Joseph, but also the master as well. Go ahead. I think he had a little alarms thing. But let me mention this before you start reading then. Remember, just to bring this back to you guys' remembrance, God gave me those 2 dreams. He's going to be a king and a ruler and rule over his family. Right now, by sight, it don't look like none of that going to happen because he's a slave right now. But because of his integrity and walking upright, despite the low position he's in life, the Lord has favor on him, and he's risen up to be the personal servant of his master, which is above all the other slaves. And the master trusts him so much, he puts him in charge of everything he owns. All right. Go ahead.
So he left Joseph in charge of everything that he owned. And with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And it came about after these events that his master's wife had her eyes on Joseph. And she said, sleep with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look with me here. My master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put me in charge of all that he owns. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?
Very important. This is where the apostle get the doctrine which he taught in 1 Peter chapter 2. When he mentioned about slaves obeying their masters, whether they be kind and reasonable or whether they be cruel. For this finds favor if you endure unjust treatment by you being conscious of God's will. This finds favor with God. All right? Meaning, when you're being dealt with cruelly, in this case, he wasn't being dealt with cruelly by his master, but his master's wife's trying to set him up. But walking with integrity, whether your master is kind to you or whether he's cruel to you, if you walk with integrity in either case, then this finds favor in the sight of God, and he will bless you. There's a reward. All right? So where did the apostle get this from? He got this from this situation out of the other many, but this is one of them, where you have in a lowest state as a slave, a man who's keeping his integrity and walking upright before God. And even when he's put in this high position in his master's house, and his master's wife want him to sleep with her, He's still, not because of her, not because of his master. He said, how can I do this great evil and sin against God? Him conscious of God's will, even while he's a slave. Sold unjustly into slavery. Didn't deserve to be there. He didn't do anything to his brothers. Yet he's there. But while he was there, even where he didn't deserve to be, he still walked uprightly and was conscious of God's will in the lot of life that he was placed in. And even when in a rulership position, he still would not sin against God, being conscious of God's will. It had nothing to do with his master or the master's wife. It had to do with his fear of the Lord. All right, go ahead.
Then she spoke to Joseph day after day. Though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the people of the household was there inside. So she grabbed him by his garment, saying, "Sleep with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to make. He has brought a Hebrew to us to make fun of us. He came in to sleep with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home."
So look at all this unfolding, brothers and sisters. He's unjustly sold into prison. His brothers' hearts moved first by the love of his father towards him, and then by the dreams God gave him. So out of hatred, they sold him into Egypt. They thought they were ruining the dream. That's why they did it. The purpose in their heart was to ruin the dream so he wouldn't become a ruler and a king over them. So they did everything they wanted to do what they thought was hindering the dream. Then he gets sold into Egypt. Man of integrity, put over his master's house. Here's his master's wife, carnal heathen Egyptian lady, trying to get him to sin against God. If Joseph had slept with this woman and Pharaoh found out, you saw how much wrath, when we read down, how much wrath Pharaoh was filled with just off the false report that Joseph slept with her, let alone if Joseph really slept with her. It would have been off with his head. Off with his head. He would have been dead. That would have really ruined the dream. Yet the Lord holds him back from sinning so that he would not be put to death. Because it's God's will that be established in the earth. Here's Satan moving this woman to try to bring death upon Joseph by trying to convince him to sleep with her. But Joseph, a man of integrity, ignores her or flees from Satan, literally, in this situation. Go ahead.
Then she spoke with him with these words, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came into me to make fun of me. But when I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside."
So Satan mad. Here's his plan to thwart the will of God and to get Joseph to sin and then eventually be put to death because of the gravity of his sin, sleeping with his master's wife. Instead, when Joseph, the man of integrity who God hold back from sinning, flees, they use the garment left behind, which was the Lord's plan all along, but left the garment that he left behind to set him up. All right. So what everybody's doing, man and the devil, think that they're doing to like mess something up. Everything they're doing is just going to fulfill it. Go ahead.
Now when his master heard the words of his wife, which he spoke to him, saying, "This is what your slave did to me," his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison.
That means he was on death row, waiting to hear whether he gonna live or die. This is the place. This is the holding place of the king's prisoners. If the king personally throw you into prison, you've committed some grave act. In this case, the Pharaoh threw him into prison because there was a report that he slept with his master's wife. So this is a big offense. So he puts him in this place of the prison dungeon. That's where all the king's prisoners were. All right. And so they're all awaiting whether or not the king is going to have mercy on them and restore them or kill them. All right. Go ahead.
But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the warden of the prison. And the warden of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The warden of the prison did not supervise anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made whatever he did prosper.
So here he is set up, and I know we're reading the account, so everything's condensed. We don't know how long it was of him being in there to the point where he got put in charge of prisoners. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the same day. But it gives us a period of time. It said the Lord is with Joseph. So through different acts of integrity and being honest and not being a person that was trying to plan escapes and revolts. He wasn't in the prisoner's ears like, yo, let's overtake the guard and bust up out of here, cuz. He wasn't doing none of that. He was, I'm in a dungeon, I'm in slavery, I'm waiting on the master, waiting on the master to make a decision. But while he was there, he was walking upright. He wasn't stealing. He wasn't, if they was giving him food, he wasn't the prisoner guy that was over there, hey, man, give me your meal. Or it's me and you. He wasn't the guy starting the playground fight. He wasn't doing none of that, all right? He was a man of integrity, and the guard saw it, saw his character, and as a result, he had such integrity and trust in the eyes of the warden. The warden basically made him the warden, all right? And so it said that everything under Joseph's authority, the warden did not supervise because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made him prosper in whatever he did, all right? So his uprightness was a benefit to not just the warden, but which is the keeper of the prison, but the prisoners as well that Joseph supervised, all right? So we pointing all this out because he wasn't Harriet Tubman playing escape routes underground. That's the point. He wasn't doing that. All right. He wasn't Rosa Parks who didn't want to sit where they were supposed to sit at. They wasn't doing that. He wasn't Nat Turner. I got a dream. I'll bust y'all out of here. We're going to kill them and meet me at this place. We're gonna meet at the armory and we're going to kill everybody. And while the master's asleep, we're going to go up in the room and stab him to death. He wasn't doing that. He wasn't doing that. He was a man of integrity. He was not going to return evil back for the evil he was receiving. Plus, there was no reason for the killing his master or the warden, since none of them mistreated him. And they trusted him and put him in high position. All right? So,
yeah, man, we applaud those, I say we, I mean, like, American culture.
Right.
Especially in the African-American community. They applaud Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner for what they did. But Joseph did the exact opposite of what those folks did, and so we see these two contrasts here.
Right.
God's way to be a slave, and then you see, Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman's way. And
all their ways. The reason why theirs were the way it was is because their ways was dictated on human strength and them not wanting to undergo the lowest state any longer. They wanted to be done with it. They got tired of it. And so they did things to try to get themselves out of it. We know what happened with Nat Turner. They had a revolt. They killed some good bit of people. But in the end, he got sliced to pieces, and because of his sin, and then it brought calamity upon those that was with him, and on those who didn't even join him. Like the people were so enraged by his actions, they went and actually started killing slaves that had nothing to do with the revolt, and then made laws like making it illegal for them to read and things like that, because he was able to get the backing, because he was a preacher. He was a preacher who read the Bible and stuff like that. And at that point, they let him do it unsupervised. But afterwards, you can wrap that up. So, and paranoia gripped the masses so much that they started implementing these different laws that a lot of people look back on and find oppressive. But sometimes you got to ask yourself why these things get enacted, because they didn't. All these things that we talk about now didn't get enacted the day that slaves were brought here. These things were enacted over time. So why did they? And the answer isn't always because they hate us. All right, our ancestors did some evil stuff too, man. So, if you were willing to admit that, then you can be what's the word I'm looking for? Unbiased. And when you're looking back at this time, and you can see the rights and wrongs. I see a question right quick. Are you suggesting that Harriet was wrong? Yes, she was, and it was proven by God himself. Remember, the people that she led under the Underground Railroad, that she led up north, all these people were paranoid from the moment they left. And when they got up north, where they're supposed to be free now, at the time, they still were paranoid because they didn't do it legally. They didn't have freedom papers or anything. They were runaways. All right? And so at a time where slaves were free up north, they lived and stuff like that, but they were always looking behind their backs. All right, which showed a guilty conscience. She freed them from the plantation, but she didn't free them in their mind, because they were guilty before God. They had a guilty conscience that caused them to keep looking back like this. And eventually, the Lord moved it to where the North and the South recaptured those runaway slaves that went with her and brought them back to the plantations. And different things would happen to them as a result of the evil that they did. And so their latter end was worse than had they just stayed there. Then she came back and then tried to reroute it and go up to Canada and things like that. So people applaud it because they're looking at, these people are in slavery, and she's trying to save them. And so people applaud it. Yeah, that's right. But no. Same thing with Nat Turner. These are people's possessions. All right? This is people's possessions, and it's never justified to steal. All right? Nat Turner told the people he had a vision. All right? And that their suffering is about to be over with, and here's this plan. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to armor, we're going to kill everybody, and we're going to be free. The people that believed him, that followed him, because he's talking about he had got a vision from God, they joined him. The reason we know God was against them and against what they did is because how it ended. When God sent Moses and told Moses to tell Pharaoh, let my people go, and God said he's going to deliver his people out with a great, mighty hand, and they're going to come out with great substance, guess what happened? They came out with great substance. And the Lord delivered them out of bondage. And when the Lord was done with Moses in Egypt, the people were free indeed. Free indeed. All right? With Nat Turner, he gave that promise, but that's not how it ended. How it ended was he went into hiding when the people took them over at the armory. All right? They got taken over at the armory, even though they killed a lot of people. Then a lot of his followers got killed. He went into running in the woods and hide for months, however long it was. Then he got found, tried, convicted, and chopped into pieces. And then they killed more of his other followers. And then they went and killed other people who had nothing to do with the revolt. And then they enacted laws that oppressed the people even further. That wasn't you about to be free and it's going to be over with. This was your latter end was harder than when you just was preaching the word of God is still a slave. But people hand clap the, what's the word I'm looking for? The efforts. But the question that had to be asked is, was it good or was it evil? And when people make promises that God's about to set you free, you're going to be free indeed. But then when you do your plan, it all fails. You get killed. Your followers get killed. Other innocent people get killed. And then y'all still enslaved. Then we know that you lied. irregardless of how convincing you sounded, and regardless of the people hand claps. So we've given these examples to show the contrast between Joseph, who was a slave, who walked with integrity, and because he didn't have that mindset that a lot of people have where they want somebody to revolt and take over and escape. He wasn't planning that. This is the lot he's in. He's going to live upright. His masters trust him. They put him in charge. He is not going to do evil against God. And he's not going to ruin the inheritance of his master and things like that. Instead, he was honest. And because of that, God was with him. This is why the apostle said, matter of fact, since we mentioned it, let me just pull it up real quick.
While you pull it up, man, you said that the last thing you just said, man, was it hit a chord, man. It wasn't against his master he didn't want to sin against. All right. His focus wasn't on his master. His focus was on God. His focus on God. When you said that, man, that's bro.
Right.
That's deep, man.
Look at what the
That's
apostle
deep.
said.
That's heavy.
He said, servants, be subject to your masters with all respect. Not only to those who are good and gentle, not just to the nice masters who say, hey, come on over here, buddy. Can you get me some ice cream? Or, hey, you feel up to it today? I would like for you to go out there and, pick some cotton. But if you don't feel like it today. But he said, not just to them, don't just be all respect to those that are good and gentle, but also to those who are harsh. Hey, boy, what did I say? Get over here. Work. Toe. The ones that they keep talking to you like that, your human flesh be like, I ain't gonna take this much longer, man. God said, you to take it. He said, you are to be subject to your masters with all respect. Whoever's put over you, whether it's your job, whether you're a slave, whatever, or a wife to her husband, you to be subject to your master with all respect, meaning you ain't rolling the eyes at the one that treats you nice. You ain't insulting the one that's treating you nice. You ain't planning to kill the one that's treating you nice. It's either you love that one. Oh man, he does nice. He does me nice. I'll make sure I do what I got to do for my master. The Lord said to his apostles, you to do the same thing for even those that might mistreat you. Why? For this finds favor. If for the sake of conscience toward God, like Joseph, I don't want to sin against God. For the conscience of God, a person endures grief when suffering unjustly. For what credit is there if when you sin and are harshly treated? If Joseph had slept with his master's wife and then his master threw him into prison, it says, for what credit is there if when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure it with patience? There's no credit for that. But if you do what is right, meaning don't sleep with your master's wife, and suffer for it, meaning thrown into prison anyway because she lied, if you patiently, meaning without murmuring, complaining, endure it, meaning continue to walk or persevere, which means to continue in the same character despite the harsh circumstance that you live in presently. For if you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God, which will happen with Joseph.
Bro. Yo, that is deep, bro. That is deep. That is totally opposite for American culture for sure. And
right.
Especially in the African American community, man. When we applaud the rebel and the person like Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner, man, we applaud those people, man. And if you say that what they did was evil, man, people look at you like you cross-eyed. But when you look at Joseph and his situation, and you look at what the apostle tells us how we should suffer for doing right, for doing righteous things, for living rightly, man, you can't deny that. Don't turn off don't close your ears and turn off, understanding with this. This is This is foundational, because this is the evidence of the new life that that lives in the believer, that they're able to endure this way, because their hope is in God, not in pleasing a master, whether they're good or bad, but their hope is in God, whose promise is the end, but causes us to go through these sufferings in order to conform us into the image of Christ, who truly loved his enemies,
Right.
which we all are, because we're a lover of self, we're a lover of this world. We're born dead, and he loved us despite who we are. And so, the truest form of being Christ-like is suffering rightly and loving your enemies. Man, this is powerful stuff, man. This is powerful stuff. And if you get the grips on this and examine your heart, examine your life, bro, this is a game changer, man. This is a game changer.
It's not being a punk. It's not being scared. It's not being a wuss or anything like that. It's simply being obedient and being righteous in your conduct. That's all it is.
Tougher than the other one.
Right. It takes way more discipline to do this than to do what people apply today. The only way Joseph could endure that, the Pharaoh's going to say it later on, but I'll say it right now since we got this passage. There had to be a divine spirit in Joseph to cause him to walk like that despite the lot in life he was in. That divine spirit that the Pharaoh saw in Joseph was the spirit of Christ. And that's why the apostle, after seeing this about the slaves, he said, this is the example of Christ. Read verse 21.
For you have been called for this purpose, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you would follow in his steps. And then he who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth, and while being absolutely insulted,
Abusively.
he did not insult in return.
So when he was abused, he did. When he was abusively insulted, it said he did not insult in return. What else? How about threaten? Read the rest of that verse.
He did not threaten, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously.
Meaning to God. So the only way anyone is able to endure harsh treatments or unjust treatment is that they have to entrust themselves to the Lord and leave their case in his hands.
Come on.
That's it. So really, when you don't endure trials, when you don't endure harsh treatment, it's because you don't believe. You don't believe. You don't believe that.
But I believe in Jesus, man. I believe that he died. He died for my sins.
Well, you may say that, you may profess it, but just as the apostle said, faith without works is dead. The actions will prove it. And so the only way you can deal with these type of things and live this way, you have to entrust yourself to God, who always judges righteously. If somebody's treating you wrong, and God tells you don't take vengeance, leave vengeance for him, and you believe he will actually do it, and you believe he's a righteous judge, if you believe that, then you will leave your case in his hands. You wouldn't try to carry it with human strength. You wouldn't try to, do it your way, because to not do it his way, but do it your way, is to show you don't trust what he said. Meaning you're treating God as if he's a liar. So the reason Christ went through what he went through and was able to endure it, the reason why Joseph went through what he went through, because he endured it, because he had the divine spirit within him and entrusted themselves to God, who judges righteously. So since they left their case in God's hand, therefore they could focus upon walking uprightly in the time and lot that they're in. And then the Lord in this time will deliver them from out of it. Just as it's written, the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of trials. All right, so I wanted to show that right quick, because I know some elements of this, is contrary to popular demand. sadly, even from in the midst of the church. But nevertheless, it's the righteous way to live, and many people pervert this type of way of living because they have those, biased reasonings to do it. I'll leave it there. That's another live stream. So let's go back to Genesis 40. And we were at, let's see here. I think we were just starting Genesis 40.
Yeah, we just started, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Then it came about after these things that the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, in the prison, the same place where Joseph was imprisoned. And the captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were in confinement for some time. Then the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream, and each dream with his own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning and saw them, behold, they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" And they said to him, "We have had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, "Do interpretations not belong to God? Tell it to me, please." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, saying to him, "In my dream, behold, there was a vine in front of me, and on the vine there were 3 branches, and on it was budding. Its blossoms came out. Its clusters produced ripe grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. So I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand, as in your former practice when you were his cupbearer. Only keep in mind when it goes well for you, and please keep me in mind when it goes well for you. And please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison. For I was, in fact, kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews. And even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon."
Meaning he walked upright and was innocent. Now, this is very important because how the Lord set this up. He was put in the dungeon unjustly because of the lie of the master's wife. Through integrity and walking upright, he finds favor in the sight of the warden of the prison, who then makes him in charge over the prisoners. Then, as some time goes by, the baker and the cupbearer gets thrown into prison, and the warden puts Joseph in charge of them. And they just so happen get these dreams from God. And Joseph just so happens is the one that can interpret it. And then he interprets it and tells the guy, keep him in mind to Pharaoh so he can get out of there because he's innocent. Right? Go ahead. We're going to see how this plays out.
When the chief baker saw that he had interpreted favorably, he said to Joseph, "I also saw in my dream, and behold, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. And in the top basket, there was some of all kinds of baked food for Pharaoh. And the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Then Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you, and and will hang you on a wooden post, and the birds will eat your flesh off you." So it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he held a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
So he forgets. The baker forgets it. Now, there's a part that it just came to my mind. Say again, bro?
The cupbearer.
Right. The cupbearer forgets him. There's a part in the free PDF book that I put out a couple of weeks ago about this forgetting things, which is a byproduct of the weakness of our humanity. You know, it's one of the limits of men. We can experience many things, say a lot of words, and don't remember most of it. How weak is we to have done things and said things but can't remember them? When we forget something, right? I mean, it's not coming to mind. We can't remember it. When you remember something or something comes back to mind, did you go look for this? Did you go in a library somewhere and went in a drawer? Oh, there it is. There's the memory. Oh, let me pick it up. Oh, now I remember what I did and said. Or does it return back to you? If it returns back to you, who brought it back? Who brought it back? At the right time, when you need to remember something, who's the one that reminds you of things? The Lord does. We know this to be true for those that's in Christ. For the Holy Spirit reminds us of the things Christ taught. So we may forget something Christ said, but the moment we remember it, it's because it was given back to us, or it was brought to our mind, delivered by the Lord himself. So the Lord had this cupbearer, forget it wasn't time for Joseph to come out of the dungeon. Had Joseph been brought out the dungeon then, he just would have came out of the dungeon, probably still been a slave. You know, maybe restored back to his former position of being over the house of his master. But it wasn't time. Because remember what God said he was going to be. He was going to be a ruler. Not a slave, a ruler. He's been a slave this whole time. All right? And the Lord, having favor upon him, he's been put in the highest position of slaves and servants the whole time he's been there. But now it's time to make him a ruler. So it wasn't time for the cupbearer to mention him to Joseph. That time will come later. Mention him to Pharaoh. That time will come later. So the Lord has the chief cupbearer forget. Cupbearer so happy, overwhelmed with happiness to be restored back, he totally forgets about Joseph. Go ahead, bro.
Tell you one thing, man. God's time is not our timing, man.
It's not.
I'm so glad his time is perfect. It's perfect.
Right. And remember, guys, this process has been going on this is years going on since he's been sold. Years since he's been sold. So now he's left in the prison still. This unjust, he's in the dungeon unjustly, sold as a slave unjustly, hated unjustly by his brothers, set up by the wife of the master. All these people against him, yet he's walking with integrity and walking upright. And he finds favor in the sight of God.
Do that.
Say again?
I said you have to.
Right.
There's no way this is human strength. It's impossible.
You would have been a snap.
You would have tried to break out. You would have did something unrighteous. You would have did something evil or wicked. This had to been the Spirit of God moving in the heart of Joseph.
Absolutely. So we see he's walking upright, fearing the Lord when he was a slave outside, when he was a slave brought in the house, when he was put in charge over all the inheritance of his master. He kept his integrity and walked upright in every circumstance. He didn't want to sin against God while he was outside and a slave. He didn't want to sin against God when he was brought into the house and made a personal servant. He didn't want to sin against God when he was ruler over the house and nobody hired in him. Then when he got cast into prison unjustly, he still didn't want to sin against God. Still walked in integrity. Wasn't playing escape routes. Wasn't playing revolts. Instead, he watched over the prisoners, helped the warden. They made him junior warden, if you want to say that. The unofficial official warden. Where the real warden is still there. So you got a title warden, but Joseph the one really working. All right? So you got all this going on. He's walking in integrity throughout the whole way. Now, let's see what happens now. Go ahead.
Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, from the Nile, 7 cows came up, fine looking and fat. And they grazed in the marsh grass.
Before you read on, read that first line of verse 1.
Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream.
So from the time he got forgot by the cupbearer to the time that God sends a dream to Pharaoh, 2 years pass. Think about that. You're already in prison long enough, unjustly. You interpret this dream for the cupbearer and tell him, hey, remember me, man. Mention me to Pharaoh, son. Get out of here. I'm innocent. Cupbearer gets out, forget about you. And I can imagine, like, did he mention to Pharaoh yet? Day 1 goes by. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. First month go by. Most likely he forgot about me. Second month, third month, fourth month. All this time, 2 years, in retrospect, ain't a long, long time. But, bro, when you sit somewhere in a dungeon unjustly as a prisoner, that seemed like forever as you going through it. Yet he walked in integrity, though forgotten. And it's going to show. Go ahead.
And it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, from the Nile, 7 cows came up, fine looking and fat, and they were grazing in the marsh grass. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and thin, and they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. Then the ugly and thin cows ate the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, but he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now in the morning his spirit was troubled. So he sent messengers and called for all the soothsayer priests of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh.
It was too hard. The meaning was too hard for them to figure out. And so, normally, because we all had dreams before, most of the time you can't remember dreams, or they're so mixed up and crazy that you be like, man, what kind of crazy dream I done had? And the dream talks about, dreams that come for different reasons. Not all of them are some message from God. Some of it when people worry too much, it brings about dreaming and things like that. But he woke up in the morning, and this dream he had was so daggering to his spirit that it bothered him when he woke up. And that's why he called these soothsayers and people like that try to interpret it, because it was so jarring to his spirit and it had him so bothered. It had to be a message from a divine being. All right. And for Pharaoh, they were polytheists, so he was like, it's probably a dream from the gods or whatever the case is. But Joseph knows there's only one God, but he ain't gonna sit there and be arguing with them all day, being a slave. So they can't interpret it. Remember the scripture said your gifts will make room for you? It's too hard for them, but it was too hard for Joseph because he served the one true living God who gives the interpretations. So remember the baker or the cupbearer forgot about him 2 years earlier. He just forgot. 2 years later, perfect opportunity for him to remember. So God delivers the thought back about Joseph to this cupbearer at the right time 2 years later. Go ahead.
Bro.
You see it, bro?
Yeah, man. It is.
Bro, this timing is crazy.
I'm gonna just go ahead. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make a mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. Then we had a dream one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now a Hebrew youth was there with us, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we told him the dreams, and he interpreted our dreams for us. For each man he interpreted according to his own dream, and just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. Pharaoh restored me in my office, but he hanged the chief baker. Then Pharaoh sent word and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. It's one thing. The Egyptians were very hygienic. They didn't like body hair. It was always clean shaved and all that stuff.
They want to be clean outwardly, but they was dirty inwardly.
Dirty. They were dirty.
Dirty. Yeah, bro. Go ahead.
But man, like, I know you're probably gonna say it later, man, but this is like, yeah, though he forgot him for 2 years, the moment when he remembered, it was for the exact reason and the only true opportunity to really not only fulfill God's promise to Joseph, but to display God's sovereignty through the whole situation. It's about
right.
to like hit.
Absolutely, bro.
Bro, okay. Verse 15. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, it has nothing to do with me. God will give Pharaoh an answer for his own good.
That lowly mindset of a righteous man got nothing to do with me, cuz it's all about God.
So Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, there I was. I'm sorry, I got to pause for it. You know how people give stories and like, there I was. This is how it happened.
Right.
And it's funny how Pharaoh just... Anyway. There I was, standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows, fat and fine looking, came up out of the Nile, and they grazed in the marsh grass. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin. Such as I had never seen for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the thin and ugly cows ate the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before.
And I'm sorry,
Where I
guys. I don't know
awoke,
how long it was not on the scripture page for y'all. I just realized it was not on the scripture page. So I don't know how long it was like that, but we there now, guys. Go ahead, bro.
um, for they were just as ugly as before. Then I awoke. I saw also in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain, full and good, came up on a single stalk. And behold, 7 ears, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. Then I told it to the soothsayer priests, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 thin and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt, and after them 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of the subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now, as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is confirmed by God, and God will quickly bring it about. So now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise, and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt as a tax in the 7 years of abundance. Then have them collect all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and have them guarded. Let the food be used as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants.
So we see him interpret this dream, but I want to focus on a couple of things. One, there's no way that Joseph could even be in the right state of mind to interpret these dreams or do the jobs that he had of being a warden or even being a lead servant if he was focused on the evils that was done to him. If he was focused on his brothers, they sold me, and he just kept pondering on that. They sold me. I wonder why they sold me. They probably sold me because of, and he's trying to figure all that out. He couldn't focus upon being an upright, righteous servant, being obedient to his masters, because his brain would have been preoccupied with other things. So he couldn't be focused on that. He couldn't be trying to think about alternative futures that might come about. Matter of fact, honestly, because it ain't mentioned right now, he couldn't even focus on the fact he had them 2 dreams when he was younger. He knew he had the dreams, but he's dealing with his present situation. So some people who, I'll give myself as an example. Well, not myself as an example. I mean myself in terms of what I've experienced in life. I've seen people get so-called prophecies from prophets in like church or something. And they'll say, the Lord is about to do something miraculous in your life. And they kind of give them that bland thing. The Lord is about to work. He's about to move. And the person get overly excited to hear something like that. So much so, it produces slothfulness. It produces this high mind attitude where they lose focus on walking uprightly and dealing with folks because they're so focused upon this thing they're about to receive. Like it's a shoe in.
It's almost like arrogance and bullshit.
Yeah, I think arrogance might be the proper word for this. It produces this. For example, you know how when you were in school and you knew summer break was about to happen when the bell rung, and everybody gets slothful and start playing around and acting up because they know it's the last day of school, and when the bell ring, they ain't got to see people no more. So they don't carry the same integrity and attitude and being upright in their characters as they did the other days when they know that spring break or whatever's about to start. They start cutting up in class. And the teachers is so ready for them to leave, they ain't gonna write them up. So everybody starts, acting crazy because they know what's coming. This would be an example of Christians today who hear the gospel about all those that believe on Christ shall be saved and stuff. And it don't produce the fear of God that they will walk upright till they get there. They focus so much thinking they got a shoe in already because of what the promise is. They actually don't inherit the promise because it produces slothfulness in them and arrogance. So these are the type of people that are pagans. They don't want no correction. And every time you try to tell them something, they go, I got a Holy Spirit. I know who my God is, and I'm going to heaven. You ain't going there acting like that. But because they see the promise, all those that call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, they think all they got to do is do that or just focus on that. And then as the trials of life come, they don't love their neighbor. They don't love their enemy. They can't love their spouse. They ain't talking to them for days. They doing all this kind of stuff and actually think as they're living not upright, they think they're going to inherit this promise that God promised. The arrogance and the slothfulness it produces. But for those that are truly going to inherit the promise, look at Abraham, look at Joseph, look at Job, look at the apostles. Every person that received that same promise to believe on Christ and be saved, it caused them to fear and be careful how they walk through life so they can inherit that thing that God promised. They didn't go, I'm getting it because God said, I'm going to get it. And then they just be slothful and evil the rest of their lives, thinking they're going to get in. Because they're focused upon the promise. So you can't be overly focused on a promise to where it produces arrogance and slothfulness. And then you can't be focused on the evil somebody's doing to you, or else it's going to just produce human anger and bitterness and outbursts of anger and insults and reviling. So what should you focus upon then? If you can't focus upon the person and the evil that's being done to you, and you can't overly focus on the promise to where you forget to live upright, what should you focus on? The living upright part. That's all you should focus on. But that's the whole duty of man. God gave a promise to those who walk uprightly, to those that believe, and faith without works is dead. You should focus upon faith and living upright. If you focus on that, you'll receive the promise. But if you don't focus on that, no matter how much you saw the promise said or heard it or even profess to believe it, you won't inherit it. Joseph didn't, the promise that God made through his dreams didn't come about by Joseph going the whole time while he was a slave and while he's boys for his brothers every day. Yeah, I'm going to rule over you, cuz. I'm going to rule over you. When he was a slave, don't worry, I won't be a slave forever, captain of the bodyguard, because I'm going to be a ruler, because God said I'm going to rule. He didn't go around like that. He didn't mention it. Not one time was it brought up in the story. Instead, He dealt with the lie he's presently in, lived upright in it. The Lord found favor in the sight of God and in the eyes of his masters. They give him all these responsibilities. He get thrown in the dungeon, and he ain't down there planning revolts. Hey, I'm going to take the throne from Pharaoh because God said I'm going to rule. I can't rule from here. I got to make sure this thing come to pass. No. He lived as a slave, obedient, did what he's supposed to do. Then when the right time came, the Lord brought the thought back to the cupbearer, who then brought up the Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh hurried up and got Joseph out of the prison. The Pharaoh didn't even bring up what his wife said anymore. Notice that. He didn't even bring up, they didn't even have a trial or nothing. They just brought Joseph out and dealt with this dream. Now Joseph says, set somebody in charge. He didn't even say, hey, put me in charge. Make me the ruler of the land. He didn't say that. He said, find somebody, Pharaoh, and appoint them and let them do this and that and this and that and this. There's no way he could do that if he's focused upon the evils that's been done to him the whole time and how unjustly treated he was. He definitely couldn't do that if he out there protesting and got picket fences and all this kind of stuff and going up to Pharaoh's courthouses and decide he want to protest something. Instead, he focused his mind on living upright, and then that brought about the favor of God, who then put him in the right place, right time to see what we about to see right now, the big shebang. Go ahead, bro. So remember that. If you want to inherit the promise, you must focus on living upright, walking by faith. Because by sight, we would have been gave up. By sight, Joseph would have been gave up. Bro, he was never going to be king if he's just looking at what he going through. And even to this point, you'd be like, bro, how you going to become a king? You're a slave. You're a house slave. You're a watchman in a warden place. How you going to become a ruler? And we're about to see how it's going to happen. It's going to be real dramatic. So God sends these dreams. Only Joseph can interpret it because God only gives Joseph the interpretation. He tells Pharaoh, hey, appoint somebody, man. And look at what Joseph says. Go ahead. Verse 38.
Then Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, in whom there is a divine spirit?
What?
Isn't that something you said earlier?
Yeah. He saw what? The heathen saw what? What did the heathen say? The polytheist Egyptians? What did they say about Joseph? Go ahead. Read that again.
There's a divine spirit in him.
These idolaters realized even they saw the light in Joseph. Those who sat in darkness saw a light in Joseph and said, this man has a divine spirit in him. It's only one God. Whose spirit was that? But divine spirit. Go ahead.
So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you are. You shall be in charge of my house, and all my people shall be obedient to you. Only regarding the throne will I be greater than you.
Joseph
also said,
literally just made this man a ruler. He said, only in the throne am I greater than you. But even though he was greater than him in the throne, look at what he says. Go ahead.
Pharaoh also said to Joseph, see, I have placed you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put the gold necklace around his neck. And he had him ride in his second chariot. And they proclaimed ahead of him, bow the knee. And he placed him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
Whoa. Oh, my headphones came out just now. Hold on.
Yeah, but
we gotta read that part again, bro. He said, even though he's hiding him in the throne, read that part again.
Bro. It says, moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
Brothers and sisters, I don't know how many of y'all know about the Egyptians. Let me translate this a little bit here.
Yeah, break it down, bro.
The Egyptian pharaohs were regular men. They were regular men. But when they became pharaohs, they were seen as gods. A pharaoh was a god among the Egyptians. A god. He put Joseph in charge of everything in the land except him in the throne. So if you want to say in this situation, Pharaoh's God in the eyes of the Egyptians. All right? He's as a God or Lord. Joseph is right under him. He took his signet ring, talking about Pharaoh, off, which was a sign he was God, by the way. And whatever he says goes. Wherever his signet stamped on, douche, you better do what he said or you're going to die. He put it on Joseph. Then he says, though I am Pharaoh, though I am the God around here, yet without your permission, nobody will raise his hand or stump his foot in the land of Egypt. Meaning, though Pharaoh was the Lord or God as in the Egyptian sight, yet there was a God over him. Because even that God had to give permission from somebody else. In this case, Joseph. No one, and look how the Lord does this, the power that the Lord gave him in the land of Egypt. Joseph had, you know how the United States put travel bans on people and they don't let people from China come in or they don't let people from, Muslim come in or something like that. That's the authority Pharaoh gave to Joseph. He could put a ban on who can come in the land and who can't. Who can come in the land and who can't. This is very important. Because if you got that kind of rulership, he could determine who's coming there during the famine. Like his family, maybe. So, he gives him this power, yet without your permission, no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Go ahead, bro.
Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zephanath Pania and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years when he stood in the presence of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly.
Bro, maybe you can answer this for me, for the people. Who causes a land to be prosperous in crops?
Yeah, man. The Lord sends the rain. He sends the sunshine and the oxygen. He makes the bugs, and he gives animals life to till the ground. Every part of it.
So
everything God ordains.
So now let's run this back now, so we can see the sovereignty of God.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was a youth, God gave him this dream, 2 dreams, that he's going to be a ruler over his family. His brothers hated him. His brothers thought they could stop the dream from happening, so they started to kill him at first, but then they put him in a well, and then they sold him off into slavery, thinking that, hey, that's the end of it. He gets sold as a slave. And is in this slave position, gets set in charge of the house of the captain of the bodyguard. Pharaoh's wife then tries to set him up, or try to sleep with him at first. But when he resisted the devil and literally ran from the devil tried to set him up. Had the devil's plan worked, Joseph wouldn't be put to death, because that's a grave act to do to your master's wife. So the Lord had Joseph thrown into prison unjustly. But Joseph didn't sit there and ponder upon what was done to him because he continued to live upright. I'm pretty sure the thoughts came through his mind. He's a human. But it didn't overtake him, and he didn't focus upon him. Because if he did, he wouldn't have been able to leave his case in God's hand. He would have been trying to do every means he could to get himself out of it. So he continues to live upright and then gets set up as warden. Right in time for the Lord to send, or for the cupbearer and the other guy, the baker, to get thrown into prison. Just so happened where Joseph is, in charge at. But then the Lord who sends dreams gives them 2 dreams. Joseph interprets it, tells the cupbearer, hey, remember me, man. Mention it to Pharaoh. I'm innocent. Son, get out of here. Cupbearer gets restored, totally forgets about what Joseph said. Memory leaves him. Even if the man meant to remember. I'm pretty sure the man probably said, okay, no problem, man. You know, because he was happy. The dream was interpreted favorable in the sight. And when the event happened, I'm pretty sure he had good intentions to remember, but he just naturally didn't remember. So then 2 years goes by. God gives Pharaoh a dream that a famine's coming. But what is a famine, brothers and sisters? What is that? What is a famine, D?
Man, that's when the earth does not produce fruit. It don't produce grain. It don't. You can't grow nothing, man. You can't survive, bro.
Why? Because something didn't happen. What didn't happen?
Bro, rains don't come, man.
Man, rain didn't come. Then who didn't open up the windows of heaven? Who kept them closed?
Bro. Man, the Lord. That's the Lord holding his hand from that land.
So the Lord sends Pharaoh a dream. Say you're going to have 7 years of plenty, then 7 years of severe drought. 7 years I'm going to make the land prosper. 7 years I'm going to make the land suffer. God sends the rain, crops come, abundance. 7 years come, the rain dries up. There's no rain. Oh, not just in Egypt, as we're going to see. The Lord dries up the entire earth. There's no rain, no crops. The only place that got food is Egypt. So the Lord gives him these dreams, say, you're going to be a ruler. The Lord then has him sold into slavery, and he goes through years of slavery. Then the Lord gives the cupbearer and the baker dreams. Joseph interprets that. Then he sends Pharaoh a dream. Joseph interprets that. Then he said, hey, man, since this is going to happen, appoint somebody to do this and that and this and that. The Pharaoh then, by God's own doing, sees there's a divine spirit in Joseph and says, there's nobody more discerning and wise than this guy. I'm going to make you ruler over everything. Based off of what? A dream that God gave you about how God was going to dry up your land and not bring any water back? Not just your land, because the dream wasn't just you will be a ruler, but the dream specifically he would rule over his brethren. But wait, his brother ain't from there. His brothers ain't from Egypt. He only rules over Egypt. So how can he rule over his brethren if he's only ruled over Egypt? Maybe his brethren got to come to Egypt to be ruled over. Dun, dun, dun. But how they going to get there? I mean, they're in their land eating right now. They ain't going to think to come to Egypt unless God sends them there. Maybe God's going to drive them over there. How you going to do that? Famine, maybe. he ain't gonna let it rain. So they ain't gonna be like, oh, we need food. Who got food? Egypt got it. Oh, let's go to Egypt. But you can't get in unless somebody lets you in. And that gotta be a man named Joseph. Who's the ruler and the king?
The King Joseph. Yeah, Pharaoh.
Who y'all, except the brothers, at this point, they don't know what happened to Joseph. He could have died 5 months after they sold him. So at this point, they don't know what happened to him, but they know when they sold him, he was alive. But God held them where they were at. Nobody went and looked for him. Nobody inquired about him because they all thought he was dead. So when they go to Egypt, they're not going, we're going to Joseph. We're going to our brother here. Surely have mercy on us. They're going to Egypt just to simply do business, to get some food. Go ahead, bro. Look at the sovereignty, how he set this all up. Go ahead.
What verse we in?
We in verse I think 46.
All right. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood in the presence of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly. So he collected all the food of these 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities, and he put in every city the food from its own surrounding fields. Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. So before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born of Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and all of my father's household.
Read that
And he
again.
named the second. What was that? What was that?
I said, read that again about Manasseh.
Oh, okay. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and all of my father's household.
Meaning any pain or residue of anything that was in regards to what his brothers had done and the events that led to him being put there unjustly was taken away at this time. Any residue of it. Joseph was human. I'm pretty sure he battled thoughts and things throughout the time. This wasn't an easy situation that he was in. There was trials and things like that. But it said, God has made me forget all my trouble in my father's household. This is like it to a woman giving birth to a child. They have to go through that great pain during delivery, but soon the baby's out, you forget about the trouble you had the whole time during birth. Same thing with a toothache. It's killing you. As soon as you get the oral surgery, it's as if you was never in pain at all. You forget about it, meaning the sting and hurt of it goes away. So, you remember we went through it, but you also forgot how it felt. So, he says, for the Lord has caused me to forget all my trouble in all my father's household. Go ahead.
And they named the second Ephraim, for he said, God made me fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Go ahead.
When the 7 years of plenty had taken place in the land of Egypt, came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said, then there was a famine in all the lands. But in all the land of Egypt, there was bread. So in all the land of Egypt suffered famine, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, you shall do.
This is the ancient version of the, what do you call them little checks they sent out?
The stimulus checks.
Yeah. This would be something like that where the government helps you out with food to survive. But it wasn't just in Egypt. Go ahead.
When the famine was spread over the entire face of the earth, then Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. And the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Then the people of all the earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe in all the earth.
We're going to stop right there. Part 2 is going to be about his brothers. Brothers and sisters, This is where we talk about the sovereignty of God and things like that. This whole thing was a setup by the Lord. Everybody involved were just pawns. They were like chess pieces. He stirred the hearts of men to do certain things, and to the man it might have been sin, but to God it was not. As Joseph is going to reveal later on in part 2. The dream was he was going to be ruler over his family. Well, he was ruler, but he was only ruler of Egypt, not ruler of the world, ruler of Egypt. The only way he can rule over his family is if his families become residents of Egypt and placed under his rulership. But they're not going to just willingly go there. They're not from Egypt. They're not even of the Egyptian people. Something got to drive them there, or someone's got to drive them there. God personally drives his family there, as we're going to see, by way of famine. You want to get people to move? Drop their land. They'll move. If God wanted people to move from a land, he'll send a famine to make you relocate. Or he'll send a nation against you and take you out of the land through slavery. Or he'll call you like he did with Abraham. Leave your house to your father and your relatives and go to a land that I will show you. The Lord will move you when he's ready to move you. But everything happened at the right time. It wasn't the time when the cupbearer got restored for Joseph to be remembered. So God had the man forget. 2 full years go by. God gives Pharaoh a dream of what he's about to do, and only let Joseph be able to interpret it. Causes the heathen to see that Joseph had a divine spirit on him, or in him, and makes him ruler. Think about this. Because I know we're talking about Joseph, and Joseph was the little person by Pharaoh. But Joseph had a divine spirit in him. And that spirit was God's. Joseph himself ain't divine. He had a divine spirit in him, which came from God. There's the spirit of God in him. You can say, because that's what happened, that when Joseph was made ruler in Egypt, the Pharaoh had relinquished power to God, since it was God's spirit in Joseph that caused Joseph to be wise and discerning. So when he had the power of who can come in the land and who can't, Joseph the person, you could say because God's spirit was in him, God had that power to determine who was coming in and who wasn't. So when his brothers show up and they get admitted in, you can say God is the one who admitted them in. Why? Because God was going to make Joseph rule over his brothers, just like the dream said. The scripture says, the Lord said, I kill, I make alive. I heal, I wound. He brings light, he brings darkness. I, the Lord, do all these things, like the scripture says. This is why another scripture says that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Joseph was called according to his purpose. Therefore, everything that happened to him, his brother's hatred, his master's good. Him being thrown in a dungeon, he being set in rulership position. All those things work together, all these events work together for his good because he was called according to God's purpose. These are the examples that the apostles point out to us when they talk about trials and tribulations as a Christian. And why we should glory in tribulation because of what it produces. Said it produces perseverance, hope, godly character. The hope does not disappoint because the Spirit of God has been poured out on our hearts. All the things that we need to inherit the kingdom of God come by way of these sufferings and trials like Joseph's. Because those are the times of refining or testing or purifying. So, the Lord's will, what's today? Friday? Lord's will, Tuesday night podcast, we're going to finish this up in part 2 here at the podcast. I didn't want to go further than this because I got to finish this with my brother on Sunday, Lord's will. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. Because we actually started this last week, but then I was moved to come out and do this during the podcast too. So you brothers and sisters could be edified too by it. But I hope you guys see the sovereignty of God. I'm pretty sure you guys have. And to see all these little events that are added up, everything added up. Every little piece of this, these little events added up to bring about the big shebang God said at the end. That's the same thing for all our lives, all the trials, all the suffering, the time somebody slandered us, the time we were unjustly treated. All these things happened, and they all add up. Nothing's isolated. You might say, well, what his brothers did was totally isolated from what the wife did. At one point. But they're all connected to bring about the big shebang. You ain't getting him as a ruler if his brothers didn't sell him. And if the wife didn't lie on him. And if the warden didn't make him a ruler. Because he wouldn't have been there with them two servants to interpret their dreams. Had he not been there to interpret their dreams, there'd be no reason for the cupbearer to bring him up to Pharaoh when Pharaoh had a dream. So you could say they were isolated. In one sense, they were. Meaning, the brothers didn't know the wife. The wife didn't know the brothers. You could say it was isolated in that sense. But the event itself and what happened to Joseph, everything was connected. Even if the parts used are oblivious of each other. Because there's somebody else that's working these things. And that is God. So remember that, brothers and sisters. You may go through events that seem unrelated. But in a full picture of your life, they're all connected. And so, you got anything to add, Deep?
Hey, if you haven't done it if you haven't done it already, right now, go ahead down in the description below and download that free PDF. Download it today. Meditate on it. Read it. It's free. Lord brought this on Brotha J. I call him Pastor J. He put it on his heart to create that doc. And it's free. I pray the Lord will bless you. And some of the things that you're hearing today, some of it's kind of spurred off from some of the thoughts and some of the things that were captured in that in the PDF. So go ahead, go down there, download it. We hope, pray the Lord will bless you through the PDF that's in the description below.
Definitely appreciate that, bro, because I be forgetting. So definitely thanks for that reminder. Yeah, definitely, man, what he said. So Lord's will, Tuesday night, guys, we see y'all, and we'll finish up the story of Joseph and seeing God's sovereignty at play and everything that takes place, because there's a very important lesson in this latter end that we ought to learn. And Lord's will, we'll talk about it Tuesday. But if you want to, if you can, I definitely say rewind, man, start this from the beginning. And so you can pay attention to all those little details that a lot of times people kind of read over. All right, then. Well, Lord's will. See you guys Tuesday night. Love you all. Continue in the faith, brothers and sisters. Those who are not in the faith, pray that your heart be pricked and that you come to know Christ and be saved from your sins and come from under the wrath of God. If anybody got any questions or anything like that, my email at the bottom, therealbrotherj@yahoo.com, therealbrother, Brotha, the letter J, @yahoo.com. And, definitely appreciate you, brothers and sisters, for listening over from Twitter side, Facebook side, YouTube side, and those that will be listening later on through the Spotify podcast and all that kind of stuff. Love you all. Lord's will. See you guys Tuesday night. Let's go ahead and end with the music, man. Check 1 2 1 2. Let's make sure this is working for y'all. Yo, what's going on? It's Brotha J podcast.
Brotha J podcast.
Brotha J apologetics, let's go. Brotha J apologetics, let's go. Brotha J apologetics, let's go. Brotha J apologetics, let's go.
Brothajpodcast.